It sounds unbelievable for me to say this, but most of the results that I am seeing right now in my life are due to the efforts that I put in only 5 years ago. So I think it's fair to say that I have accomplished more in this past 5 years comparing to what I accomplished in my entire 20s. And looking back now, I realized that in my 20s, I was actually quite lazy. I was a full-on couch potato. So in this video, I want to tell you how I got out of it. You may have heard the saying that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend most time with, and that is just so true. We can't help ourselves but being influenced by the people, external factors, and the people that we spend time with. And this goes with anything, it can go with how much knowledge you have in specific thing, your hobbies, and the same thing goes with how driven you are or how motivated you are. I find that if I spend time with driven, accomplished, and motivated people, I tend to want to be at the same level as them when it comes to being driven and being motivated. And when I'm around driven and accomplished people, when I see what they have accomplished, when I listen to the joy that they talk about what they've done, the success that they have obtained, it actually made me realize that this happy feeling of accomplishing something is actually more than what I feel by doing nothing. Laziness in itself is not really a bad thing. Sometimes you might need to chill and wind down, but I think a lot of times we're just not using laziness correctly. So what I found helpful was also using laziness as a reward instead of a barrier. Now, we all love to be rewarded, and one of the hormones associated with feeling rewarded is the dopamine. And dopamine gets released also when we watch TV, when we scroll on social media on our phones. So these kind of activities actually release a lot of dopamine. And dopamine is unfortunately a hormone that we all are addicted to because we are like feeling rewarded. It's kind of like a feel-good hormone. But not only dopamine is released when we are doing certain activities, dopamine is also released in an anticipation of said activity. For example, you may think that people are addicted to shopping because they are addicted to buying items, and that the act of buying items themselves actually release dopamine. However, you realize that when you actually browsing for items, when you're searching for items, that anticipation of eventually you will be buying those items also release dopamine. So what does this all have to do with stop being lazy? In the book Atomic Habits, James Clear mentioned a method called temptation bundling, where you combine 2 habits or 2 activities together. One would be something that you're not really excited about, but you have to do it. Another one would be an activity that you really excited about, and one of those dopamine releasing activity. So in practice, what I found helpful is that I would tell myself that I need to complete this task and I will spend 2 hours doing it. And then after that, I will reward myself with being lazy, maybe watch something on Netflix for 45 minutes. And that is practically how you use laziness as a reward rather than a barrier. Another thing I found helpful is actually understand how your brain works. There is this thing called Zeigarnik effect, and I really do hope I pronounced that correctly, but basically what this theory says is that when you're starting a task and you haven't finished it, or when you think about doing something and you haven't completed it, the thought of unfinished work actually stays in your mind even though you proceed and go on to do other things. And this is something that actually happened to me last night. I was thinking about writing an email to one of my colleagues, and I thought I'll write it first thing in the morning when I wake up. And during the night, as I was trying to go to sleep, the thought of me of writing these emails and all the wordings that I would include in the email actually played in my mind throughout the entire night. And that means that I now understand that if I need to do something, I'll do it straight away. Otherwise, my brain would just not give it a rest, and I'll just keep thinking about it until that task is done. And as we said before, that laziness or feeling lazy is a normal part of life. Sometimes you need a downtime because you're just exhausted and tired. And I think it's important to pay attention to the language that we use about ourselves or how we brand ourselves. Changing how you view yourself or speak about yourself can actually have an impact of your personality and what kind of a person you are. Take myself and filming YouTube video, for example. example. Of course, most of the time I do have my own schedule where on the weekend I will sit here and film a video. However, there are going to be some weekends that I'm just not feeling it. It could be that I feel under the weather, or I've just really had a busy week with work. So I don't want to just sit here and, it's actually quite a lot of effort to be on a camera. And although I enjoy it, some days I'm just not really up for it. And on those days, what I want to do most of the time is just sitting around on the sofa, doing nothing, and sometimes read a book, and sometimes I'll just lie there cuddling with my dog and doing nothing else. And I will allow myself to have days like that where I have some downtime. However, what I will not do is I would on those days brand myself as a lazy person, because although I have a chilled out, relaxing day, that doesn't mean that as a person I am lazy. And the more you tell yourself that you are a certain type of person, you may find that you actually start to believe it. I think we can all agree at this point that technological advancement can be both a blessing and a curse. And for me, I find that there are actually numerous ways that we can use technology to our advantage. Use technology to getting us out of a rut and start getting things done. And I'll be the first to put my hands up and say I'm no saint here. As much as everyone is addicted to mindless scrolling, and so am I. Sometimes I go on Instagram and I can just spend 15 minutes, sometimes it will go over to half an hour. So for me, it's really important to find a system or find something that almost forced me to not use social media so that I could do other things more productive. I use Android phone, by the way, and I've been using this app called Lock Me Out. Not sponsoring this video, by the way, but it's just something that I found incredibly helpful in terms of reducing my screen time. So what this app does is, as it says on the tin, you can specify the time and list of apps that you want this app to lock you out from. I currently have 5:30 to 11:30 as my focus time. I find I am most productive in the morning, so those times are the times that I don't want any notification to come through. I don't want to be using social media, and those times are actually the time that I wake up, I start working and do the most important things before the afternoon rolls around. There was a period of time in my 20s where I spent all my free time and all the weekends watching every single episode of Game of Thrones 3 times, because that's exactly what I would do if I don't have plans or directions for today and the next day. So for me, planning all my things, all my activities and all my to-dos on Google Calendar is really helpful. I use a combination of time blocking and task, and the last one may sound quite simple, but I actually find this quite life-changing. So I have this one sentence that I keep playing in my mind when I don't want to do something. The only way to not be something, and you can fill in the blank here, is to not do something, and you can just fill in the blank here. For example, if we're talking about being a YouTuber or getting views on YouTube, then I would say the only sure way to not get views on YouTube is to not make videos. Or we can put this in perspective of someone who wants to progress in a career as well. So you could be saying to yourself, the only way to not get a pay rise is to not ask for a pay rise. And I talked about this before in other videos, so if you want to know about how I increased my salary 5-fold in a short period of time, then I will leave that video in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Again, I'm really speaking from experience here as a former couch potato. Remember guys, the best way to get something done is to simply begin. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.